Hi, and welcome to the Aspire Europe Agile Project Management course. This is one of a series of videos for the practitioner exam, and in this module we're going to talk about requirements, estimation and risk. Normally these modules take about 10 minutes, so I won't hold you up too long, but hopefully we'll give you a decent foundation for the materials in the course. One of the reasons why Agile has become so popular over the last 5 or 6 years has been its ability to cope with a complex and uncertain world. We've got this concept of VUCA, which is a kind of management acronym that we're using regularly, which talks about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Now, these are all the things that project management doesn't like. All right, project management is all about having certainty, being able to design having clarity about what the end game is, and knowing how you're going to get there. In the biggest concept, you imagine being in charge of a massive defense project that says we're going to design an aeroplane that's going to have the latest technology in it, but it's going to take 20 years and nobody has any idea what the latest technology is going to be. But you have to keep changing the specification and looking at the evolving technology as you're going along. The same in the medical world. There's constant changes in the way that we do things, how we treat things, the size of the equipment needed for things like MRI scans, all that kind of capital equipment's continually changing. So that short and long-term projects have to deal with that. Lots of people will be doing Agile, be dealing with the digital world, massively complex, companies' portals, whole loads of little interdependencies. You change one field, the whole lot goes over. So we're trying to cope with that. But actually it's no good. If we wait and launch a huge solution, and it knocks loads of things over, it can be disastrous. So if we're releasing incremental improvements and changes, we can cope with the consequences much better. So VUCA is a good basis. There's constant change going on. And the idea is that if we keep to shorter timescales, achievable step changes, then we've got more chance of success. So let's have a little think what a requirement is. Okay, there's a term, requirements this, requirements that. But requirement is it can be this is the official term within the book or within the course material. A requirement is a service functional feature that a user requires. Yeah, absolutely, we know that, don't we? It's the level of detail we need to go to. Yeah, look, just in this example, if I ask you to get me a pair of shoes, all right, you don't know what those shoes are for. Just saying to get a pair of shoes isn't going to help. You need to think about the next level of detail. What are you going to use them for? Is it for sport? Is it for racing? Is it for walking through mud? Is it for going to dinner parties? What are you going to use that product for? And that's where this idea within Agile of the user story has come from. And if by telling the story of what the software is going to be used for, the development team can think about how they can meet that need. It's a bit like you doing this course, all right? If we just said, I want to do a course, it wouldn't be much good. I want to do the Agile course. Well, actually, you want to do the Agile course, but what you want to do is pass the exam as well, isn't it? You're not going to just do the course potentially. So we need to think as part of the development team for this, but how are we going to help you get through that exam, not just how we're going to teach you how to do Agile. All right, so user stories. And here they are. So this is what it is, and we have these things called cards, and these are normally developed during workshops, and they tell that little story. Yeah, as a customer, I want to be able to place an order online so that I can have my food delivered to my house. So it's an absolute classic for ordering a pizza, isn't there? Yeah, that's how you do it. And as my customer for this e-learning, as your customer, I want to do the course so that I can pass the exam and be able to get a better job or get a pay rise. All right, so those are the kind of things that we need to think about. And these are great ways of articulating and bringing things to life. Yeah, it's easier, it's much better than writing a spec for a course that says, right, it needs to cover this syllabus, You could write it that way, huge detail about what you want in the course, or you can say to us, the outcome I want is to have passed the exam, and then we develop you a course. So the kind of things that you could put in, this is kind of classic kind of document stuff coming in now, isn't it? Yeah, unique identifier, some sort of reference for it, the story title, the role of the person, because you're looking at this through a customer. But what about if you're looking at it through the eyes of a cook? Who has to, in the case of this, cooking some food? Who are the other people that might be involved? There's the person that's going to cook the pizza. There's the delivery guy. He wants to do, what's he need? So I'm the delivery guy. I want to deliver the order, so I need to know where the house is, and I need to have the postcode to be able to deliver it. So you can see the same function coming from different people in this. Okay, that's how it's going to be. And you've got other things like business value being derived, which you can cover in the course. But that's what a user story is all about. And they're a great idea, aren't they? They're just bringing this whole thing to life. Yeah, when we're designing some of our courses, you know what? From our perspective, we want you to be better at your job. It's not always the view of a training company. They want to just sell you stuff. And if you look at some of our other courses and in some of our bring it to life stuff, we're trying to give you ideas to actually make you better in your job. Just passing the exam, we want it to be better than that. And that's where you're seeing it from the different perspective. You might just be saying, all right, thanks very much. I just want to pass the exam. All right. So we have to design course that achieve that quite easily for you as well, or as the most optimally, not easy. Okay. So three types of estimation that we talk about. And this isn't particularly unique to Agile. So we have top-down estimation. That's basically where you're sat at the top looking at all the components, and basically you're giving it an educated guess, if I was wanting to use a different term. Yeah, you're kind of saying, right, it's got to be done in 12 months. These are the constraints you've got to work with. I want it done for this money in this time. And the one thing that's movable, of course, is scope and flexibility in Agile, because Agile tends to focus on the money being fixed and the time being fixed and what can we do in that time. So top down is the kind of classically done in lots of projects, you know, where you actually say, here's the deadlines, this is what a rough guesstimate of what we want to do. The only problem is they're very inaccurate and they're normally very optimistic as well. Yeah, so top-down approach to estimation tends to fail pretty spectacularly. Bottom-up approach to estimation is taking every job that has to be done and assembling an estimate of what we think it will take. And we do it in quite a lot of detail, and it tends to be pretty accurate, but it takes a long time. And also, people don't tend to have the patience for it. All right. So bottom up tends to be pretty accurate, but it's time consuming, and it can also deliver an answer that people don't like, as it is going to take 3 years, not one. So, and then life cycle evolution is basically we're doing our estimating as we're going along. So as we go along, we get more accurate. We know what the delivery performance of the team is. And if I just take the development of our e-learning software, quite frankly, we thought we would have got the whole thing redeveloped a lot quicker than we have. But we've learnt over the period to restructure, redesign the course, getting more and more accurate over the last 12 months, 18 months, as it is for each course. So we're much more. So actually, we've incrementally improved. And that's the idea behind life cycle. And here's the diagram that we see within the model. As you can see there, you kind of, as you're going from left to right, at the outset, yeah, the top left-hand corner, we don't have much detail during feasibility. It's suggesting less than 10 big requirements at that point. What are the things that we want to do? And then as we move forward, as we go into the foundations, we'll bring in more requirements. Yeah, this is, okay, so what can we talk about? We'll talk about shoes, right? We'll talk about shoes. At the outset, we just want a pair of shoes that are waterproof. By the time we get to the middle of it, pair of shoes that are waterproof, they're black rubber soles. Yeah, they can be well worn to work and that kind of thing, all right? And then as we go on, the requirements become much more detailed, much more accurate, but it's by evolution. The problem's been with projects is they try to do that detailed set of requirements, the over 100, and sometimes running into thousands in the early days when they're not quite ready for it. All right, so that's the way to look at it. It evolves, it changes, and you've got more chance of getting something viable. And it also means as you go through those project goes, no goes, you can actually tighten it down. You can go, do you know what, enough's enough, or we can't have that. We can change on Moscows to what must be, could be, and should be done. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about risk management. Now, risk management is the same in Agile as it is in anywhere else. And one of the fallacies in the early days of Agile was that you don't need risk management because everything's moving so fast, or because they're so dynamic they won't hit risk. Well, the truth of the matter is, Agile creates as much, if not more, risk than anybody else. So first of all, thing to remember, there's three elements of a risk. There's the threat, yeah, which is the danger you're facing. There's the event, which causes it, and impact is the effect of it. So if we were saying, well, there's always the threat that one of our Agile project managers might leave, there's always that threat. The event might be they pass the Agile PM practitioner exam and are offered more money by somebody else. And the impact is we haven't got a risk manager anymore. That it's going to take long. We're going to have to recruit another one and we're going to get delayed. So there we have, that's how risk works. So if you're new to risk in this Agile course, that's the foundation. You might want to go and have a look at our fundamentals course actually for some more information on risk. It's very important. So where do we find risk? There's risks that are going to hit basically 6 different areas within a project. The benefits, yeah, there's a risk that we don't deliver the promised performance changes. There's costs, which are can go up and down. Obviously, there's the quality criteria that we could be using, scope and time. Now, the way Agile works is it tends to try and fix us to time. That's why we have the kind of 6-week increments with the 2-week sprints in the middle of it. All right, so we try and lock our time down, and during that, we lock down how much money we're going to spend. So we do reduce the risk around time and cost. But what that then creates is risk around scope, because in those 2 weeks, we might not be able to get the work done. So we might not be able to deliver some of our Moscow stuff, or we might have to reduce our quality to get into that time frame. And of course, that can have benefits. But the other side of risk, of course, is it's positive and negative. Now, there's a potential that actually you go much faster, more aspirational than you thought you would be, and you can deliver more. So the quality can go up and the scope can go up. So that's how it all works. All right, so that's how risk management works in any project environment, but equally for Agile. So just a little thing, if you're an experienced project manager, you'll be familiar with this stuff. There's 2 types of risk. There's threat and there is opportunity. And when we're faced with a threat, there's a number of things we can do. And these are kind of called our responses. So number 1, we can avoid it. So if we can see a risk coming, we'll do something different. You can avoid it and take the risk out of the scenario. All right, if there's a risk from one of our suppliers not providing the facilities we want, well, we'll just go to a different supplier and then we avoid the risk. Then we've got share. If we talk about this in terms of something like car insurance, all right? So if you've got a car, there's a risk that you might have an accident. Well, you share that risk by taking out car insurance. And the risk is shared largely by the fact you accept that you'll pay the first 250 quid's worth of damage. That's how you're sharing the risk, because the full risk of the car, the full value of it, 2,000 or 3,000 quid, yeah, you've insured it for that, but you've shared the risk of the initial or the smaller elements. All right, you can sometimes use share when it's reputational. It's a little bit limited, and the problem with transfer is you pay for the privilege of giving somebody else your risk. Or you can just accept it. Yeah, this problem may occur, and if it occurs, we'll deal with it. And the risk might be so big that it might mean the end of your project. So you might be looking at an organizational restructure or something going on there. And you go, well, if that actually happens, then the project will have to come to an end. Agile's perfect for that because it's controlling your incremental spend. So you can accept the risk, or you can do something to reduce it. Yeah, you can put in some countermeasures, take a different approach. There's various things you can do. But basically, you'll reduce the risk. And then ultimately, you have a contingent plan for what's left over. So you can transfer it, you might reduce it, but you might just have a plan and say, if that happens, then we'll do X, Y, and Z. And I suppose if we're looking at the pandemic and you look at different countries around the world, pretty much everybody had to accept that we could have a pandemic. But if you look at the contingent plans of the Far Eastern nations, they were a long way ahead of the contingent plans in some of the European nations, weren't they? So they couldn't do much other than accept it. You couldn't transfer it, you couldn't share it, you couldn't avoid it. They could reduce it a little bit by their borders and locking down, but it was the ones that had contingent plans to deal with it, which were the ones who were effective. Okay, so now let's think about the other one, which is opportunity. It's just the reverse of it, isn't it? Good things can, it's a chance a good thing can happen. So what can we do to do? Right, there's things that we can exploit it. Okay, well, there's if we take this shortcut, we can save a week's work. Well, let's just do it. We'll take it. All right, maybe we can enhance. Maybe we're looking down the road a bit and saying, well, actually, if we spend a bit more time now or a bit more money, we can get some bigger returns. So we invest in making that opportunity happen. We can reject it and choose not to do it. Yeah, we can go, okay, it's a nice opportunity, it would be nice, but the consequences of that on other things that are going on are too severe. So we could choose not to take it. And of course we could share it. I mean, actually at the end of the day, any sort of gambling is sharing the risk. Yeah, so you could actually look to find a partner to invest some money in it. You could give them a share of the benefits or the proceeds from the risk, that kind of stuff. Okay, so there's a few things to do there. Like I say, if you want to know more about risk, I'd suggest you have a little look at our risk fundamentals module, which not a lot more detail, but does cover it in a bit more structured way. Okay. So there we go then. We've looked at risk, which is pretty generic, to be honest. There's nothing particularly special about it. You do need to remember that when you're looking at risk in an agile world, you do need it. All right, don't fall for the thing, oh, it's agile, we don't need risk. You need it even more because you're moving at pace, dependent on lots of other things around you, and you're normally existing in a volatile world. And we talked about the problem of VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity in your world, and the effect that has on estimation, which we've talked about as well. And we talked about top down, we talked about bottom up the most accurate, top down's guesswork, very inaccurate. But what Agile brings to the party is let's estimate as we go along. So we set ourselves a year, but we'll be looking at estimates all the time, and we'll keep making these sprints to make achievements so that we're getting the biggest bangs for our bucks. Okay, well, that's the end of that video. Good luck with the course. There's a lot more detail in the material for you to read, and good luck with the exercises at the end.